Hello and welcome to anyone who dares witness South Forest talk about his game he is making called Alchemy Academy. A trading card game that is trying to be different from, the typical ones, Magic and Pokemon and all the other ones. And, not trying to clone. And come up with a completely something refreshing, I would hope, out there in the series of games out there, by providing something different, and which is a hopefully goal. And though having not really played those games in a while, I have a passion for cards no matter what. And though most recently has been mostly like deck builders and whatnot, and though I have recently gotten into Pokemon Pocket, and I enjoy it so much. And finding my old cards, I've come around to wanting to make my own game, and I've always been wanting to make. And one thing I want to do is, as I said, put something out there that is different. By how much, who knows? That's up for everyone to decide. I will say, like, maybe two main characteristics that it plays from all the other ones is one major one is combat. There is none. It's more like a competition between two characters, and how energy works in terms, or mana, or whatever you want to call it, the resource to use your cards is vastly different than probably anything seen. At least I think so. Well, we will have to get into that. I will explain. I will explain a lot of this game because I want a general video of just a general overview. As I will make more videos going into detail, and hopefully catching interest in people testing it out. I can have this get this available on Tabletop Simulator in a sense. You still will have to do a little bit of effort to get the cards into it, but at least it'll be kind of playable, and that's the goal, because I want to know if it's worth pursuing, if it's fun enough or good enough to see it coming to fruition in the long run. And I already know there's some quirks, and I'm still having to think about how it works. But we'll get into that over time. I plan to essentially this channel be a catalog of the process of making the games, and I'm hoping to work people who are passionate and to make a great new game here. And so I want to go over the theme of how the game is going to work, because since there's no combat, it's going to be a little different. And essentially what it's going to be is, two contestants going out there, going in front of a judge, and showing off their skills, and see, who's more skilled, or, can show off better. However, it could potentially be themed and whatnot. And as you can see right here, I got the cards here. I have no art. I'm not an artist, unfortunately, and I will probably get into that detail a little later. But what you're going to do is that I have avatars sitting right here. I can't. All right, you can't see them all here. I'll move up here for a moment. And you essentially get to select between these avatars. They're not done yet. I still need to come up with one clearly for the black faction, and you will essentially pick one of them. And I don't have a really good example, but what will happen is that you'll pick one of these. They'll have this passive ability right here, and then the level up requirement, so you can get to a better one to pretty much essentially snowball it to be better, which will probably be the theme in the game is building up and snowballing to win. Though there is going to be the aggro archetype in this game, I'm sure there will be, and I'm hoping all the archetypes will be available and successful. But that will definitely require a lot of balancing in figuring out, what's good and what's bad in a game. It's really hard to tell considering without some play testing because it's I think way too different to really know. I'm sure it will be discovered very quickly due to the nature of how the game is going to work. But you essentially pick one, and then you will build a deck around it, that character. I think and there's even one of the factions that's focused around making the this even better in an indirect sense, but that's details for another video. So essentially you pick them out and they're going to go out and do their stuff and impress a judge. The way you win is by tipping the scales in your favor, in a sense that you have to have 5 more points than your opponent. So it will keep going while the scale is going back and forth till one of them hits the floor by scoring that many points. And hopefully, at the final stages of the game, you're able to do a sudden massive point load, or be too consistent for your opponent to may even bursts can't even keep up. But we'll find about that later. So essentially, if your opponent has 7 points, you need 12 points to win. If he has 12 points, you have 17, and it can go ongoing and could essentially never end in a sense, which I could see that being a problem. And hopefully the game is good enough not to hit stalemates, though that's probably inedible no matter what. But if anything, we can find a way to balance and change that. The good news is about a game that's an ongoing process. You can actually have like patch notes as I update cards to fit what what's needed to go with. And considering the cards, I think that it's going to be in like the first set is going to probably potentially be the core cards, the basic cards that you will hopefully need to as more sets come out. They'll hopefully maybe at some levels still be useful. That's the goal, but who knows? Power creep is a thing, and it is an inevitable reality. And hopefully, in this game, kind of like old cards can potentially see new life through like support of an archetype or whatever. I could potentially see that working, and I would love to achieve that goal. And how there's even I want to say a potential goal for because of the lore, one character in the first set to be stupidly overpowered, but like a few years down the line he becomes like just viable. And I would love that. I almost want that to be a goal because I think that would be a lot of fun. And but there you go. You got 2 contestants going at it, showing off their stuff, but that's not the gameplay, right? So you only got to see that. Now you do see that there are cards that with the hang on, that's distracting me. Sorry. You can see with the art, and they're going to be the important one. They're the resource essentially. Right here, herbs. Herbs are the resource. And as a guess, if you played enough games, you probably, when it comes to the alchemy, you probably have an idea in mind what's going on. And right now, there's going to be six factions, and have specifically tried to develop them, all of them, in a way where they have their own unique play styles. They'll have their strengths and weaknesses, which is really killing probably the potential of a neutral faction, as I was building to have core things, so no None of them are completely out of having some tech or whatever, but that may be a problem. But that's something to solve in play testing and whatnot. So each faction will have their play styles. I might go into that a little bit more. But how does the game play? Because that's obviously important and needs to be covered. And when you think alchemy, and it's Alchemy Academy, so it's got to be alchemy involved. So the two contestants are essentially going to, have 3 flasks sitting out in front of them, and they're filling them with herbs, and then using the herbs to make. Okay, I will have to explain some level of the core of the game here, because as I think about it. And as I said, future videos will be far more prepared in terms of how the game works. So I'm going to go up here. And okay. So you have 3 flasks with 3 slots available in front of you at all times. And what you're doing is you're putting herbs in the flasks and you're getting energy on the side. I have a video that will explain this a lot better. This sounds far more complicated than it is. And when you fill up one of these flasks, you will be able to play what's called a recipe card. And you can tell, because I mentioned 3 slots that you have, and this is what it's referring to. You need 2 red herbs on your bottom one to get the perfection effect, and then if you have 2 herbs in like here and here, or here and here, you can still play this, but you don't get the extra effect that's down here. Which allows you to make, which right here alone allows you to make there's decisions to be required to be made. You have decisions to make, and skill will definitely, or planning will definitely be required. And this gets insanely complicated because if when it comes to what the opponent's decks or maybe what potential meta is. And you will put herbs in here, and then you have the recipe card. But that's not all. That's not the only mechanic, because you got the cards in your hand, and this will be in your hand. You will have You will have the 3 flasks, which will be your board, and you're working with them. And every turn, you're drawing 2 herbs. 1 to put in the flask and 1 to use as your energy. Because what happens is once you have filled up a flask completely, whether you play a recipe card or not, doesn't matter. Once you fill up a flask, you get that energy into your energy pile, so you can use, spells like this. Which, this one right now requires, 2 red herbs and 1 of any color herbs. So you can think Magic the Gathering in terms of how this reads, and I intentionally did that for readability, especially for any, at least card fans that are familiar with Magic the Gathering. And there are various types of cards. There's, techniques there, which you can play on your turn. Then there's, D for distractions, where you can play during your opponent's turn to, hinder them in any way, shape, or form. You have this card, which works kind of like a recipe card, but was I refer to as a puff, which now is a thing that's on your board that has a constant effect till either removed or whatnot. There are many decisions be made here in terms of how long they how long they stay up or turns and whatnot, and how their effects works based on how other cards work and how I word them. So there's definitely a lot of thought that needs to be put here. But essentially something that you can put out that is consistent. There's also flasks, which I had to explain like how that works, but that's for a later time. But you put these cards in your flask slot to improve your flask in a sense, so you can get more effects to go on. And so you're starting to play out a kind of a small board in terms of helping yourself win. And one thing to really note here is the idea of, here's the very basic card of give one impression. And this key word here, which essentially will be give X expression, is the scoring of the game. This is how you impress a judge and how you win, because you're giving an impression to the judge, and that is essentially your point and what tips the scale. That is your goal here, and every single time you fill up the flask, you don't even have to play a recipe card. Every single time you fill a flask is called an alchemize, which also gives an impression no matter what. So there is a form of constant progression in the game in some way, shape, or form. And it's a whole lot. And there's so much you can do with this, but then it's like no different than any other card game. Like Magic, Pokemon, they keep getting new mechanics, new card types, and whatnot. And I've already thought of quite a bit of potential ones in the future. Also cross faction, but the first set I don't really want cross faction for right now. I have a lot of ideas for that, and I already see the problems in terms of cross faction. It's already way too easy, and I don't want this to be there's only one playable deck, period. And I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible. And my goal here is to make something just completely new with so much variety available out there. And while I was making this game, I've been going out, kind of like soaking up as many information about people talking about card games and, how to build them and, what's out there, and even going out and looking for other games in terms of how they work and whatnot, and build, the best thing I can possibly build. Of course, no game is without quirks and things, and I probably will actually need help to figure how to fix some of these issues. In this game, you will also have, your playable deck, what you think normally in terms of Magic Gathering, but this one will have something different because of how the resources work. But you will have like two decks, the deck that you play with, and then the herb deck. And right now, I'm thinking that the herb decks will have to be specifically constructed with certain herbs in it, and not you make your own herb decks, because if you can't if you can have the all the herbs that you need at all times, then there is no variety, no challenge in terms of playing with what you got kind of thing going on, because you're going to get what you need no matter what. Like the whole purpose of how how I explain how the recipes work is completely destroyed, because you'll always have the perfection effect and it doesn't matter. I want some level of choices to be made, risk reward and all that, and probably even potential setup and how it works. I understand this video is probably not going to be enough in terms of explaining it. I hope there will be some level of interest in terms of pursuing finding out more as I explain how the game flow works, what I'm aiming for in terms of what each faction does and how they work, and really have thought out how everything is. And so, because the cool thing about Magic, especially probably after what I've heard of Ravnica, it really has a structure to it, and I think it had, even before then, it has been rather consistent of that, because when it comes to the cards, they have definitely their own goals and how it works, and I'm trying to do this here. Although I'm coming to the realization that I have to create like I'm trying to come up with cool cards, and a lot of these cards that are probably better off being put further on in further sets because they're far more complicated than anything else. And I need to make more of the basic cards, the bad cards, the fillers, because I'm certainly not doing that. But considering, working with 6 factions, with, their own mechanics, at least, every faction has their own mechanic and focus. It becomes difficult to have those basic cards in a sense. And funny enough, they're sitting in a neutral, and I think it might not be a bad idea to have that neutral faction to get a feel of which faction should get what and shouldn't. So there's like an even competitiveness to them, and make sure that they have their own feel, their own goals and whatnot, because I want them all to have variety of gameplay. They all feel different in how they play, and that is the main goal there is here. And the philosophy probably behind it is probably there, simply because I heard someone talk about things, and it's like, hey, this is focus here, in the way I did it, and it very easily be revealed in future videos in terms of how that works. But yeah, I'm not showing off too much. I will make videos going into further detail, explaining everything, and things will be filling out. And I hope you join me on this journey as I, make a new card game, and you can say, hey, I was there since like day 10. that would be awesome. Anyways, if you even made it this far, obviously subscribe if you're interested. Comment if you're a friend. Of encouragement to go, hey, go and make this. And I hope this becomes a thing. I hope this is exciting and new for people, and I would love to. Oh, art, if anyone cares. I'm sorry for that clap. That was really loud. I will have to know, and I think it will be important. I need to put like art into these cards. And I will likely end up using AI art in that. The thing is, I do want, when it comes around to this game having potential, when I do like a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, whatever, to get funding for this to be made, I want to actually hire 6 artists to work on the cards, and I want all the factions to have their own different styles. And I kind of want to give some level of creative freedom here. I still have a vision, so there's going to be like a box and limitations of what I want done, and for that to be followed. But if you stay within the box, you have that freedom. If you want to go here or here or here, as long as you don't step out of that line that doesn't follow the vision, or goes against any other potential thing out there. And I wanted to throw that out there. And one thing I do realize when it comes to even when I've play tested this a little bit, that having the art in the cards helps a lot to be able to recognize them immediately, so you can actually tell, know what the card is without having to read it, because of the image. I've noticed that it becomes very important in terms of anything else, because it is far more significant than the name of the card, or even the text of the card, in terms of identifying it. because well, it's just the design of card games, right? Anyways, subscribe, comment, and I hope you tag along in this journey and to make a great new trading card game out there that everyone will enjoy. Thank you and goodbye.